Okay, everything up and running? Network issues aside, because Comcast keeps dropping me down to not enough upload speed. So hopefully this works. Okay, I finally made a video that people actually want to watch, which is very exciting. So I'm going to try my first live stream. How's that for you? Basically what I'm going to be doing is assembling a Lily 58 keyboard, which is a split ortho do-it-yourself kind of kit. Uh, it's mostly going to involve a lot of boring soldering. So I have a bunch of surface mount diodes. I got started on this one. I have another board to do, and then a bunch of little Cherry MX quick change contacts I'm going to solder on. And that's about it. So if anyone shows up to the chat, I'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, thanks for watching this after the fact. We've got two circuit boards here, and they are completely symmetrical, which is pretty efficient. You can print one board twice and have two halves of a keyboard. So there's a bunch of surface mount diodes, 58 keys, that's why it's called the Lily 58. And then it takes two microcontrollers. I have a micro USB and a USB-C version. They both should work equally, and then they attach to each other with this TRRS cable. So I don't know. I think this is gonna be fun. Hopefully you enjoy watching me be terrible at surface mount soldering, because I need more practice at it. Got a bunch of diodes here, and we're just gonna get going. Yeah, Elvin, I'm making an Ergo keyboard. Trying to. I wanted to buy one. Turns out the most reasonable one was about $300, and this kit is closer to 70. Ideally, once I have this made, I'm gonna have a buddy of mine change the circuit board around to add more keys. I don't think 58 keys is enough for me. There's only a couple for the thumb here. I want a bunch more. So this is kind of a learning experience, and then I can look into the firmware on these controllers and get new boards made. I don't think I'll actually enjoy using an Ergo keyboard like this. I like having all the buttons on my gaming keyboard. I like the macro keys. I very much enjoy backlights, which in this version you can't really backlight very well. Also, the lights haven't shown up. You can put one little strip of LEDs on each side, but you can't have individually lit keys unless you buy the through-hole version, which doesn't have the quick disconnects. I didn't want to do that because I have absolutely no idea what mechanical keys I'm going to like, so I ordered a bunch of cheap ones from China, which haven't shown up yet, but then I'll be able to experiment and, yeah, hopefully learn something. This is just all pretty new to me. So let's zoom in the camera here, and hopefully that's a good view. The surface mount diodes are tiny and terrible. They're labeled T4. I think I have a model number for them somewhere, but they're about the size of the soldering iron tip, which with my shaky hands is no good. I'm gonna have to go dig out some tweezers probably. Give me a second. There we go. Okay, so I have some flux here. I'm gonna flux up the connectors, and I'm going to do one side on all of them, make sure they're all the right direction, and then do the other side because it's a lot easier to move them when they're only half soldered down, if and when I definitely make some mistakes. So hopefully the live stream is working in general. It's complaining to me about my internet speed despite me buying very expensive internet because I don't know. I think Comcast just hates uploading. Ow. I'm going to put a tiny bit of solder on each pad. And I'm going to try to arrange the diode the correct direction, which is hard to see. And melt them into place one pad at a time. There's one. There's two. And so on and so forth. And it's so hard to see the little line on these diodes in this light. There we go. Terribly crooked. Okay. And so on and so forth. I don't know. This is just relaxing and soldering practice. And it kind of helps to zone out and slowly solder something like this together. Work sucks. But I probably don't need to tell you about that. Yeah, that one's crooked. That one's bugging me. So yeah, I finally made a video that people actually wanted to watch, which is exciting. It's about Super Mario Land DX, the terrible bootleg AliExpress game. Glad people are enjoying that one. It's pretty nice to have people watch your video, but then, you know, it makes me nervous. It's a lot more pressure when people are actually going to watch something compared to when you know nobody's going to watch it. Hopefully anybody can hear me because I have no idea if YouTube is working. I haven't live streamed before. Usually I do this all on my own, so I can edit down all these boring parts to be about 4 seconds long instead of 40 minutes. Plus I make a lot of mistakes, and it's a lot easier to edit out your mistakes when you can actually edit the video. Oh, hi Eric. Glad you saw it. What did you think? Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoy watching me sit here, mostly talking to myself while compulsively trying to tweak surface mount components that are black on black on this circuit board that probably isn't very easy to see. I can get, so that's not going to work out. And I moved the microphone, so now I'm hitting my head against it, which also isn't ideal. Tiny, tiny little diodes. They look like up close. Probably won't focus on it. I don't know. It's Monday night, and just a relaxing thing to do. Chill out and work on a project. And whether or not anyone wants to watch a video of this when I can cut it down, I have no idea. Maybe not, just because there's so many options. If people are much more experienced with this kind of thing than me. But that's not going to stop me from at least doing the project in the first place. Shaky hands. That's backwards. Wait, this one's backwards. How many of these are backwards? All of them? Great. We only do one side, because I got all of these backwards except for one. Story of my life. Thanks, Eric. I'm glad you're watching me sit here and screw up this circuit board. I'm going to be at it for probably a little while. This is the only one I got on the right direction. Okay. The line on the diode lines up with the line on the board. You'd think I'd remember that by now. Go. I don't know. I feel a little crazy trying to do surface mount by hand. Just get some soldered paste, bake this thing in an oven, and let it kind of assemble itself. But this is something I'm bad at, so it's a nice way to get better by forcing myself to do it over and over and over again till I figure it out. try and keep them flat. So, since my other terrible Nintendo game video did so well, I ordered another bootleg game. I'm excited to get in, but I'm even more confident they're not going to send what was advertised. It's an NES game called The Legend of Iowa, and I'm fully expecting them to send me The Legend of Zelda. I don't even think that one's going to be a ROM hack because there's several different stickers on different games called The Legend of Iowa. The thing about AliExpress is they always screw around with the label because I think they can get away with bootlegging games so long as they don't use the actual logo on the product page. I don't know how well that's working out for them. But I don't know. Hopefully the Legend of Iowa exists and they do send it because that'll make a much more interesting video. I also ordered a flash cart for the NES, which I think is going to be fun. It has an FPGA in it, so hopefully it's all the mapper chips right. I'm on a quest to play Punch-Out on an original NES and a CRT TV because it's supposed to be a lot more beatable, and I am very much struggling to beat it on my Raspberry Pi emulation box. So hopefully a flash cart will get the job done because I don't feel like spending $80 on a real Punch-Out cartridge. Also, a lot harder to find a CRT TV nowadays than I thought it would be. Their stores don't stock them anymore. And my parents threw out my old college CRT TV. So probably gonna have to resort to some shady seller on Craigslist or something just to get some obsolete thing that people, a few years ago were just giving away on the street corner. It's become a lot harder. No one wants to ship something like that. They weigh like 200 pounds. Hey, at least you can solder batteries into Pokemon. I I ordered a box of NES batteries actually, which were on my workbench right up until the point I cleaned it off for this. Huh. Sorry, I'm looking around for a box of batteries. I honestly don't know where I put. There they are. Here. Is it a EverDrive? I think it's like an EverDrive. It's not. It's not an EverDrive. Very bootleg looking thing. I think they said N8 on the product page. I don't know. I cut my teeth with a R4 on the DS, so I'm used to flash carts having a bunch of numbers that mean nothing as their branding. I'll probably pull up the product page. KY Technology N8 plus 1001 Ultimate N8 Remix game card, etc. So I have no idea if it even works, and more importantly, if it works in general, I don't know if it'll work with Punch-Out because Punch-Out used a very specific mapper chip that is not the common one, which mostly is a memory controller with a timer in it because everything in Punch-Out is timer based. But Punch-Out might be the only game. I think maybe only one other game used it. So all the other NES carts use the much more popular chip. So I'm not sure it's very likely to even find a working bootleg of Punch-Out just because it would use an uncommon feature on the board. So I'm hoping the the FPGA-based N8 thing will be able to emulate different mappers and make the game work. Uh, if not, it'll be interesting to find out. But that's the challenge. That's the challenge of it. That's the fun of it. To pick the most hardest arbitrary thing and try to make it work. And Punch Out is a hard game in general, especially with latency. When you need to be almost frame perfect and you're seeing the frames 3 frames later than they happen, it's almost a guessing game at that point. Although I had a buddy who could beat Punch Out on the Wii Virtual Console, which is crazy because the Wii remotes had quite a bit of latency. Uh, the reason I pulled out this battery is because in preparation for the Legend of Iowa coming in, I pulled out my Legend of Zelda to make sure that the battery was still good. I was planning on replacing it. It turns out it still got 3.1 volts of charge out of a possible 3.2 after 30 years, which is absolutely crazy to me that a lithium battery is still good after that long. Same goes for the Adventure of Link. I checked both. I bought batteries to replace them, and they're both still good. So I'll still probably change them out, but at this point, since the battery's still good, I'm going to do something more complicated because I'm going to have to try to power the board while changing out the battery because I don't want to lose my save games from when I was like 7 years old. So it'll be kind of like that plot of that Seinfeld episode with Frogger, which is a reference that I don't even know if that flies anymore. They hook a arcade battery to a car battery to an arcade machine to try to save a high score, and then the whole arcade cabinet gets destroyed, which is probably what's going to happen to anything I try to fix. Gets destroyed. Uh, yeah, Elvin. Emulation does mess up the clock speeds, especially if you're not using a very advanced emulator. There's some pretty good ones and pretty accurate ones on PC, but that are very compute intensive and they don't actually work very well on the Raspberry Pi. I think Muxin is one of them. I think I have that the NES version works on the Pi, but I can't get the SNES version of it working, and it's designed to be really accurate. But also, there's some really cool emulators out there where you can kind of pause the game and see what's going on in real time and look at the memory, uh, like the memory map, like what's about to be drawn to the screen, all the really in-depth details, which I want to get set up someday and take a look at. I think it'd be really cool to write an NES game or to modify an NES game. I don't have the patience to actually do it, but I know assembly code, so it'd at least be interesting to open one up and see what's going on with it. I really don't have the patience to do game development. So one interesting thing about I think the Playdate just came out, which is a weird kind of retro-ish Game Boy thing with a black and white screen and a hand crank as a controller. And there's some people developing pretty interesting games around that, but the graphics are black and white with no grayscale, and the original Game Boy had 2 shades of gray plus black and white. They're very limited, which in a lot of ways is interesting to me because as someone who doesn't have the time to draw graphics, dealing with black and white 240 by 320 graphics might be right up my alley, especially when the expectation is for the games to be incredibly simplistic, since it's a small little thing. Although I don't want to spend $180 on one of those things just for the novelty of it, but the SDK is really easy to download. So that's something I might pull up at some point just to see how far you can get into development without actually having the hardware on hand, which is probably not very hard, not very far, because a analog hand crank isn't really something you can just buy and plug into your computer very easily. I don't know. All my software skills are embedded programming kind of thing, microcontroller development. So I'm really good with the kind of software you would be running on a very old computer, like a Commodore 64. But I learned it way after all that stuff went obsolete. So when it comes to real software development, I'm not good at it at all because the operating system gets between me and the hardware is where my passion lies. But these controllers that run this keyboard probably are going to be right up my alley when it comes time to tweaking what these keys do, getting the lights up and running, and then eventually, hopefully, making a more expanded board with more keys on it. Which I don't know, and I really don't get the trend of keyboards with very few keys on it. Um, I like having the option of the keys, even if some of them I don't use very often. I guess these have some kind of shift functionality where all the keys are there, but you have to hold it down, but you don't move your fingers as much, which sounds difficult to learn. In the very least, I want function keys on the keyboard, because when it comes to games, it, a lot of games would be really hard to play without function keys, or at least a lot more of a hassle than I would want it to be. I don't know. I like the idea of having high quality mechanical keys and everything. I'm just waiting for the right keyboard to come along. Um, my current keyboard is an old Logitech gaming keyboard with an LCD built into it, and that LCD comes in really handy. It's just a little dot matrix thing. Uses a clock, uses a performance monitor, and I just like having it there. But when when Logitech decided to update it, they decided the right solution was to have you sync your phone to it and have an app to handle that stuff. And that's clunky. That's not the convenience of just having a little screen always built into your keyboard telling you useful things. Plus, I use my phone a whole lot when I'm on my computer, so I don't want to have to switch between my phone as a keyboard screen and my phone is my phone. Yeah, let me. Yeah, I like having the keypad too. I use my keypad every day. Alvin, does 60% have the function keys? I know 40% definitely doesn't. Oh, this work is so shoddy. These diodes are not even remotely straight. Half these diodes are it's kind of floating on top of the solder instead of being flush on the board. They kind of have a choice between pushing them down or holding them in place, and that's not working out so well. Okay, well, they're at least all on the board. So I'm gonna pull a multimeter and just make sure they're all facing the right direction and still working before I solder down the other side. It'll be from the inside going out. About right. And lift that up. Look at that. My very crooked handiwork, but I think I'll get the job done. One of these was bothering me. This one. It misses some of them and substitutes for combinations or make them smaller in size. So it depends on the keyboard, I guess, whether or not there's function keys. I don't know. That's a big one. There's a lot of games where I guess it's not as common anymore, but quick saves or StarCraft comes to mind. Use the function keys just to open the menu. Here. Okay. Wait, what am I doing here? Inside. Something's rubbing. Inside facing out. I think that's right. Positive to negative. Yeah, I think I'm measuring that right. They all should be facing the same direction. That one's crooked. I'm not even on the right mode. What am I doing? Okay, let's try that again. Okay, that makes way more sense. I was just reading a weird voltage. I guess it was working. Okay. Multimeter has too many functions. I'm used to the very cheap Harbor Freight ones. Opposed to the almost as cheap but way more functions Amazon one. But accuracy isn't usually that important to me. If I'm off by a fraction of a volt, I just need to know if there's voltage. Okay. I think they're all the right direction. I'm going to get so bothered by how crooked these things are. I'll fix one more and then just say forget it. And of course, it's one that doesn't want to play nice. There we go. Okay, forget it. Okay, now it's just time to touch up all the other side so they actually make a real connection now that they're all in place, which should go pretty fast. Go. These are pretty ugly solder joints. I'm putting way too much solder on them, but it'll be okay. They're also looking kind of cold, but I think I just have everything slightly shifted off the pad where I really want it to be. Oh, that was... Oh. Oops. Deal with that later. Actually, all these diodes, they look like they're on the top side of the board. They're actually going to be on the back side of the board since they're reversible. That way they don't get in the way of the switches. So, not likely to even see them once everything's together. Is that all of them? I think so. Yeah, I think that should be good enough. Pretty messy, but should be okay. The first go at one of these keyboards anyways, and it probably won't be the last. I ordered way too many parts from AliExpress because when you're paying $6 for shipping and $1 for a bag of keys, you wind up getting multiple bags of keys and multiple colors, so I can mix and match and figure out what I like once everything comes in. Okay, what's next? The key socket holders are next. These diodes away. Give me one moment, please. Okay, so these are the sockets for the keys, and they go on the opposite side of the diodes. So these boards can take two different sockets. I don't think they can take both at the same time. One's for MX style, and the other is for the other kind I can't remember the name of, from some other brand. I only ever hear about the Cherry MX, so that's what I bought, just because I figured they will have a lot of common alternatives available, and they do. This is stay open. There we go. This little ammo strip should have 58 keys, and it's slightly sticky, so it keeps resealing itself. Okay, I'll get started with these. I don't know, George. I don't think my solders look all that good. Actually, I'm pretty much hate the job I did, but that's okay, because I think it will work. Okay, so there's two little pegs on the bottom of these connectors. No idea if you'll be able to see those, but there's two pegs, there's two holes, and there's multiple other holes for other connections, and I think partly the keys themselves will go into those holes, but it's a pretty flexible board in terms of what parts you can put on it, it looks like. Once again, fabulous, fantastic surface mount things that are difficult to work with, which is the point. To put some solder on there and make sure it stays flat. There we go. Now the cord's getting in the way. Great. Okay. I'm just gonna socket a few of these in. Just go at them all at once. Or knock everything loose. We'll see what happens. Hoping these don't have to be perfectly straight once I put the keys in, and that there's enough wiggle room to not have to be perfect. Otherwise, I'm going to have a bad time later. Okay, that one worked okay. Very nice sound to ripping off that plastic, I think. There we go. I don't know, this time of night, my hands just get shakier and shakier, which makes this harder and harder to keep my soldering iron straight. There we go. I feel like there's probably a correct way to fill these particular connectors in with solder. I don't have the slightest idea what it is. Hot. Hot, but doesn't feel very straight. Well, it's stuck, so that's what it's going to be. Very relaxing, though. Great way to sit back and kill some time. So Sammy wasn't very impressed. He glared at me from the top of the stairs for a while, and I think he went to bed. He sleeps all day and then still gets tired at night after his 1 hour of hyperactivity. What else is there to talk about? You gotta help me out, chat. Here, let me posit a question. You woke up in the future, like out of a coma, and there's nobody around, like the say like the movie 28 Days Later. Just you wake up, it's the apocalypse. There's no people. How do you figure out what year it is? Let alone the exact date. Computers are down. What do you do? Yeah, Elvin. Sammy is definitely cat-like in that he will sleep 19, 20 hours a day and then want to get in your face for the rest of them. Oh, you're sitting at the desk. You're not paying attention to me. I'm going to rip up this toy regardless, but I want you to watch me rip up the toy. I can't just do it on my own. He's just grumpy because it's been almost 22 hours since he's been to the dog park. He wants to go again. Sticky. Why is it so sticky? Well, if I woke up in the future and I didn't know what day it was, I'd start by looking at things that are expired on the shelf, like milk or something, and see the expiration date. That would at least narrow down the last time they put milk on the shelves. And depending on the state of that milk, I bet you could get pretty close. Not like you're going to find a newspaper. Those don't exist anymore. That was bad. Get in the hole. There we go. I have to say, the videos where I do soldering, the soldering is what I cut out the most. Because I am embarrassed about my soldering technique. I don't think it's very good at all. Especially my desoldering technique. Usually when I have to solder, I have to desolder. Oh man, does that messy and not work very well. You look at the videos of people who do it professionally, they just buy a machine that's just a vacuum cleaner that gets really hot at the tip and just sucks it all out, and you don't have to spend 25 minutes finagling with it. So I'm hoping I get most of these solder joints right the first time, because that rework is going to be a big hassle. Here, how's Sammy tonight? George, Sammy is hopefully asleep because he's not in my face, but trying to set up this stream. He wanted to tear the place up, and I set him outside, and he started howling a lot at, I don't know, the neighbor or something. Maybe there's another bear out there, but I don't know, not likely. Is very, very hyperactive tonight. He's very annoyed that I didn't take him to the dog park after work for 2 hours again. He's got to get used to being at this place throughout the day. He wants to spend the day inside. He will not let me leave him outside during the day, and then by the time I get home, he's all pent up. Like, why'd you leave me inside that long? Because you're trying to break down the door to not be let outside. Because you want to go sleep on my bed for exactly 4 hours and then spend the rest of the day upset that you can't come and go as you please. And the hazards of this house is that since both my back doors are glass, I have nowhere to put a doggy door. Short of cutting a big hole in the wall, which I imagine isn't so smart. I had a neighbor that did that once. Where was that? That was in Roy. Yeah, that terrible next door house that smelled like death and took them a year to sell, despite the housing market. They had just cut a big hole in the wall of their kitchen next to the sliding door to go out to the porch, and they had to repair that hole at some point to sell the house. I think that was around when they had that crew in for like 3 or 4 weeks just painting the whole house gray, which I don't think was going to be very long lasting on the siding of that house, but I don't think they were very concerned with it at that point. Cut a doggy door and the door going to my garage, but then I'd have to put a second door going out of the garage into the backyard. If Sammy can come and go out of the garage when I get home, I'd be worried about him just bolting out the garage and running around town as he's wont to do. Hopefully these are going in pretty straight. I think they're going better than the diodes at least. Those holes holding everything together definitely help. Mostly help. So I don't actually know if YouTube has a time limit on how long you can stream. We've been going for about an hour. Getting close to done on the amount of soldering I have, though, which is good. And spoilers, I don't actually have these switches to pop into this keyboard yet. They're still being shipped over, so I can't actually completely finish this keyboard tonight. Just doing the soldering. Okay. Work. That worked less. Hmm. So, gotta figure out what I'll be up to this weekend, or my next real video is gonna be. Want to make a follow up to the helping out new YouTubers video, but I don't know how many subscribers I'm gonna have by the time I can put that together. That's one of the drawbacks of having a video people actually wanted to watch. My subscribers are actually increasing, which on one hand is going to make it a whole lot easier to find channels that qualify. Although, I kind of want to find the smallest channels I can in the spirit of the point of that whole video, to find people who are new and getting started and no one's paying attention to them, even though they're trying really hard, because that is a frustrating experience. But the hard part about nobody being able to find these people is that I can't find them either, which isn't ideal. I jump through a lot of hoops. I look at a ton of my commenters when their icon looks like they might have a channel, just to see how popular their channels are. Once I'm through looking at the commenters and the subscribers, I then look at the people the subscribers subscribe to. Because on people's subscription pages, it'll tell you how many subscriptions those channels have, which is a kind of quick way to sort of parse through it. YouTube makes it as hard as possible to find people based on the number of subscribers they have. There's just no way to do it. Which is where people commenting on that video could help a lot. If I can get people to engage a little bit more and give me recommendations. Not a lot of recommendations on that last one. Hopefully the next one I'll be able to get some more people chiming in and can just sort of help each other out. Because you can't depend on the algorithm. Can't expect the algorithm to help you out because it is indecipherable. I have no idea what's going on there. But a lot of the time it just doesn't even feel fair. Which is a drag to a lot of people who really have a passion. Maybe not the most experience, but it's hard to turn that passion into experience when you put a ton of work into something and you're just screaming into the void. And maybe the video is good, maybe the video is bad, but you have to be your own judge of that. Not a lot of people are going to tell you why your video's bad when nobody sees it in the first place. I wish it was a little bit more obvious to new creators just why the algorithm doesn't like them. Because it's hard to figure out. They have analytics, which is supposed to help. But analytics, when you have analytics on 20 viewers, that's not the best statistics. I can tell you that. Hi, Jeff K. Glad you found me too. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for stopping by to watch me slowly solder together this ortho keyboard. It's a Lily 58 Pro, which I believe you can download these files and print this board yourself, actually. I'm hoping you can. I have a buddy, ex-coworker, who wants to get into circuit board design using specific tools, and he asked me for ideas, and I think he's willing to edit one of these boards for me to be a little bit more custom. And he's also good at firmware, and I'm pretty good at firmware, so we can hopefully actually program the keyboard to work with extra buttons in different layouts, and that's going to be hopefully a good project or a good weekend if I can actually get him to come down here. He just moved to Denver for a job in Boulder, so it's not the easiest drive in the world. He was going to come down here last weekend to borrow a hand drill, and that's like $20 in gas to borrow a $40 tool, so it's totally understandable why he never showed up. Okay, looks like I've got all these contacts on with 4 to spare. I probably should have counted these before soldering, so I'd know if I was missing any. But that looks okay. So we got the switch holders on top, the diodes on the back. That's all the soldering. No, that's not all the soldering I have on this board. I've got other parts. I've got a whole bag of parts. I have TRRS connectors, which stands for tip, ring, sleeve. They're so how these boards communicate through each other is through a audio cord. They're not sending audio data, they're just using data, but it's the one on your phone, or that used to be on your phone with a little extra ring on it. So I can solder those connectors down. Make sure I'm putting on the right side of the keyboard, because that actually matters now. Now that I've got the diodes on the bottom and the switches on the top, they're directional. So oh, and there's a specific outline I think they have to be in. There's extra holes since these boards are reversible. That should be it. 4 solder points. Aren't very long legs. They feel a little bit light for a connector like this. I'd think it'd be a little bit more robust, but it is what it is. I'll try not to tug on it too hard. Think that's right. The other side. There we go. Another one of the modifications I'm hoping to do on a version 2 of this keyboard, if I ever get around to it, is I want to port the firmware to a different set of microcontrollers. These are Pro Micro, which is a kind of Arduino board, which Arduinos are fine in theory. I just always find them to be incredibly overpriced for what they are. So there's a small microcontroller that you have to solder together yourself. We'll do that. But these boards are like $10 a piece, and when you have to have two, which for a microcontroller is kind of a lot. I mean, they can get a lot more expensive, but for what these things do, it's just too much. So there's the Raspberry Pi 2040, which is a new, pretty powerful microcontroller, and those things are like $5. So I kind of want to port the firmware to those because they're more capable and cheaper. But that's going to be probably a pretty significant amount of firmware work. Maybe not too much because going between Raspberry Pi and Arduino is a thing that people do a lot, so it's probably well documented. But I don't know if this particular board is going to be a very popular one, so I don't know. But that's a road I will cross if I ever get to it. I don't know. I'm hoping the stream, at least quality wise, the technical level is working okay, because I just kind of threw this setup together. And by threw it together, I mean I've been working on it for like 4 days, and I still have no idea if it's actually particularly functional. Although a lot of that was me setting up a dual PC game streaming setup upstairs over and over, and then tearing it down and then putting it back together when I realized that getting audio from a gaming computer to a streaming computer is a giant annoying hassle. Uh, at least it is if you want to listen to that audio without a ton of latency. Yeah, I think I got it together. Sat down to decide what game I wanted to play, and went to bed. didn't didn't do anything with it. Oh man, I really mucked up this connector. This is not remotely straight. Yeah, that's better. Hot. Probably not good enough, but better. There's got to be a better way to do this. Okay. Make mail headers straight. Hola, Stefan. ¿Cómo estás? Really hope you speak Spanish in Chile and not Portuguese, because I'll definitely mess that up a lot more. There we go. Great. Getting all these pins in line. About two different versions of this microcontroller because I think the firmware will be compatible between the two. This one's micro USB, the other one is USB C. The reason I did that is because, in theory, I'll be able to use either cable to run this keyboard, which I think would be pretty convenient. Or it won't work at all, in which case I'll have to crack open the firmware and make it work, which I was probably going to do in the first place. That's not going to happen in this video. That is somehow an even less interesting thing to stream than soldering. Gracias, Stefan. Hey. Okay, my Spanish is incredibly limited. No sé el algoritmo de YouTube. Es muy mal. How do I say confusing? Tango un gato los pantalones. That from the movie Blue Streak. Martin Lawrence. Underappreciated comedy. I definitely need to practice my Spanish because I've barely used it since high school. So the words I remember are very specific to papers I wrote in high school. I wrote a short story about La Plaga de Bebes, the plague of babies. It was very random, but my Spanish teacher was entertained. I don't remember what it was about. I just remember that I think I stole it from an episode of Invader Zim. It's a show I liked a whole lot more before 20 years of merchandising kind of wears on a guy. Also, they had a Netflix movie that wasn't very good. So, okay, there's microcontroller 2 out of 2. The boards are laid out pretty differently, even though they think they have the same controller on them. YouTube recommended your channel. I'm glad YouTube recommended my channel. It usually doesn't, which has been a very awesome thing to see my most recent video getting recommendations. It's been very encouraging to go from 140 to 540 subscribers in 2 weeks. Will it keep going? Probably not if all I do is sit here and solder. But yeah, it's definitely interesting and encouraging. It's a lot more pressure to try to put out something good now that I know people are going to be watching it. All right, I need 2 seconds to see if I have female headers, or I might just solder these controllers directly to the board. Let me check on that real fast. See here, the short answer is no. I have male headers. But I actually do want headers on this board, so I will have to get some in. And I will not be soldering these down tonight. Although if you do solder this yourself, you have to follow this outline because there's 2 sets of non-compatible pins right next to each other. Hopefully I can at least get these into place. My crooked pins. There we go. Okay. Something, something vaguely like that if you can get together. Spanish is funny. Por qué? Yes. What is funny? I say what is funny in the sense I actually can't remember the word for funny. I don't know. I'm curious. Do I have a bad accent? Am I just using the wrong words? My Spanish teacher learned Spanish in the Dominican Republic, and the second year I had was a French lady who spent a lot of time in Italy teaching us Spanish, and I don't actually think she knew Spanish, so that wasn't very helpful. Get this in the hole though. Not working out. It's too crooked. Did I solder these pins so crooked? Get in there. Let's go. Uh, Almost. Get in once. We'll be able to get in. Got it. Good enough. Not going to solder them down. I just wanted to make sure they were straight enough for that to work. Fantastic. Do I have anything left to solder down? I don't think so. Not tonight, at least. How these go together. So these boards stack together with these boards. Make sort of a case out of stacked circuit boards. So that's going to be interesting. Going to try and get a 3D printed case instead, but they're all sold out and I don't have access to a 3D printer. So, going to work on that. Oh, reset buttons. I got reset buttons to solder down. 4 whole more connections. And then I think that's all the soldering I have to do tonight. Don't know how important it is to reset a keyboard. Hopefully that doesn't come up often, because that will be a pretty significant hassle. But I'll have to reset my keyboard. I don't know what this button's for. Let's try to hack that down. No, that's not working. How do I hold this into place? That'll work. Aha. Gotta outsmart the switch. Okay. This seems solid. All right, that's going to do it tonight for the soldering, at least. Can shut that off. So I think it's about time to start wrapping it up. Anybody else in the chat? Any last minute comments, questions, important things for me to know and respond to? I'm open. Ask me almost anything, just not that. Okay, try to put all these screws back in the bag. Very nice. Okay, everyone who's still watching, thanks for sticking it out. Gonna call it quits. And anyone watching on YouTube, I have no idea how long this video is going to stay up before I crop it down into something way more interesting and re-upload it. So until then, I'll see you next time, and good night.